Number of our folks that are back, those of you who are continuing to join, if you'll help populate the poll that's on your screen, that will provide the feedback for our presenters of the afternoon. So let me just set the stage. You've heard me refer to the need for the LEA and the districts to have a strong career tech ed plan, and that the funding, be it Perkins, CTEG, or Strong Workforce, should help to implement and support that plan that has been developed by that specific LEA. When I was looking for somebody to talk about the CTEG program, Tanya Meyer from the far north, she's the K-14 TAP in that region, recommended that I reach out to Raelynn Sharp, which is what I did. And I appreciate both Raelynn and Tara, who helped not only shape the content that we're covering yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but also have agreed to be co-presenters on this training. So thank you. I appreciate your work. So this afternoon, our presentation actually focuses on building your CTE plan, and then how to actually leverage the dollars available to you in developing then a proposal that will help fund your actions and leveraging that CTE funding. So with that, let me introduce Tara and Raelynn. Thank you, and take it away.
Thank you, Lila. My name is Raelynn Sharp, and I work for the Sacramento County Office of Education. For the past 4 years, I have been a CTEG technical assistance provider for Region 2, which is in Northern California. And I asked for that poll because I wanted to get an idea of who the audience is, because and what your knowledge is with regard to CTE. I don't want to be redundant, although I know it's important that we all hear the same message at the same time, and that's one reason why Lila has brought this training to be. So with that said, what I have been doing as far as technical assistance to the districts goes, before I go, in the chat box, I put in a link to a Google document that has resources for the K-12 pathway coordinators and all kinds of resources. This is something that Tanya started for the far north region, and I wanted to make that available. So everything that I am going to talk about and Tara's going to talk about today, all those resources are in that doc, so feel free to look at those. So for the past 4 years, the technical assistance that I've been providing has to do with building relationships with the LEAs. So they didn't want to have anything to do with me at first, but once I got out into the field and started talking to people and building relationships, and they would start to talk to me, and then they would ask questions, and they would see that I could follow through and bring them some answers. I had great relationships, and now I have great relationships with all of my LEAs. Some of the questions, the frequently asked questions, are things like this. What grant funds can be used or not used for making purchases? They always ask about capital outlay requests. If you're not familiar with that, that form is in the Google Doc. I always offer to review the capital outlay requests before they're submitted. Just an added service that I'd like to provide. They always have questions about the RFAs when they come out, both CTEG and SWP. And the thing that I need to stress to you is read the RFA, and then read the RFA again, so that you're really familiar with it, and then you'll be able to answer questions as they come up, because they will. People want to know about due dates and deadlines for Perkins, CTEG, and SWP for reporting and the application, that sort of thing. They want to know what can be used for matching funds and what cannot be used. They want to know about the applications. They want to know about what is Perkins. They want to know, can I use bond funds for match? Things like that. Then they also have a lot of clarifying questions about the things that CTE puts out and deciphering things like the post-secondary data collection process, things like that. So I think as a K-12 pathway coordinator, you're going to be helping LEAs, and the most important thing is to know where to go to find the answers that you need. So now I also wanted to let you know that if you have a district that's considering opening a new pathway, there are several questions that they need to ask themselves before they do that. They need to find out if the instructor has the proper designated or single subject credential. Does the sequence of courses align to a specific industry sector and pathway? Do the courses have CTE standards alignment in the curriculum? All these resources, again, are in the Google Doc. Do they have the proper CTE CalPADS code assigned to it? Does the sequence of courses meet the objective of all CTE pathways in your region? High wage, high demand, high skilled careers that can lead to self-sufficiency. And have you formed an advisory committee? So all these things are important things when you're building a pathway and building a plan for CTE. So can you go to the next slide, please? So
take down the poll.
I'm sorry?
Melissa, can you take down the poll?
Oh, I didn't realize it's still up there. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
So the poll showed that about 9% of the people on the call are new to CTE. 60% have a strong understanding of what's going on in CTE, and about 60% of the attendees are K-12 pathway coordinators. That was the last time I looked at the poll. So with that in mind, if I'm going too fast, or if those that are new to CTE have additional questions, please, you're more than welcome to get in touch with me. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. And I'm sure Tara will be also. So getting started developing a CTE district plan. So these steps will provide an understanding of the task of developing a high quality system of CTE program of study. So it's kind of a checklist. You have, first of all, 2 resources. Well, you have more than 2, but here are 2. You have your model curriculum standards and a pathway tool, both of which are in the Google Doc that I shared. You need to have core teachers that are working with your CTE teachers. They don't always speak the same language. So when you're building courses and your CTE teacher is talking about a math equation and they're using a different math language than what the math teacher is teaching, it's important to get those teachers in the same room so that they can talk to each other. Counselors need to understand the pathway and course sequences for promoting the pathway, and so that they know how to put kids in the pathway. A lot of times CTE becomes a dumping ground, and it's important that counselors understand that there is actually a sequence of courses, and you shouldn't just, if a 12th grader has a hole in his schedule, you can't just plug him into the capstone course without having taken the sequence before that. So counselors are huge and important in the developing a CTE district plan. You also need administrative support for funding, and they need to promote your pathways. So it's really important that you have administrative support at your LEA and at your district level. So all these people need to be in the room. The high quality evaluation form is being revamped and will be coming from CTE soon. We'll have to be patient as we wait for that to come out. I'm told that they're currently working on that and it'll be out soon. That will be how you can assist LEAs in evaluating their current programs. It takes time to build a CTE plan, and it takes a lot of good communication, and setting goals is really important. If you go to the next slide, please. So number 8 here, how are you going to fund your CTE programs? This is huge, and we're going to go into a lot of options for funding your CTE programs. And a lot of this is repetitive. Michelle talked about this yesterday morning. I have another slide that I'll show you about different CTE funding sources that you can use. Items 9, 10, 11, and 13. It's really, really important that CTE be in the LCAP. If you don't know what the LCAP is, find out. Every district has an LCAP. You can find it on their website. When ROP went away, districts were supposed to put CTE into their LCAPs, but that did not happen in most districts. So now we find ourselves as CTE advocates in a quandary because we don't have a lot of funding in a lot of cases, and that's because we don't have district plans. So a CTE plan is really important. And then finally, you need community partners. You need to have an advisory committee. The advisory committee provides input on curriculum, and they will offer work-based learning opportunities, which is hugely important in CTE. So when it comes down to it, if a district is struggling and they're not sure what they're doing, ask them if they have a plan. If they don't have a plan, these are the steps that they need to take to make a plan. If a district is asking, should I purchase this, or should I do this, or should I add that? The thing that you should ask them is, go back to your plan. What does your plan say? If it's not in your plan, why are you doing it? Does it make sense in your plan? So that's why it is so important to have a district plan. Next slide. So here are some of the different types of funding for CTE. The LCAP, that's your general fund. That is where, if you remember back to yesterday when Michelle was talking about the cake, that is your bread and butter and your cake. CTIG and SWP are more like your frosting and sprinkles, your extras. But these are all different sources of CTE funding. And something to keep in mind is if LEAs can show that they are leveraging their CTE funding, they can earn positive consideration points in their application. Next slide. Okay, so working the CTE plan. You have to make sure that you're meeting the needs of all students and aligning it with in-demand industry sectors. CTE courses should be integrated with academic courses. This is why the teachers should be talking to each other. Non-traditional and unrepresented students should be included in all recruitment efforts. And then you also have to think about how to overcome access barriers and accommodate for special needs students. So these are all these different things that CTE leaders will need to be thinking about as they're developing their plan, and to include all stakeholders in the development and the evaluation process of your programs. So that's in a very, very brief nutshell what a CTE plan is. Again, I encourage you to go to the resources, and I know that Tanya and I will both be adding resources to the Google Doc to help K-12 pathway coordinators. Tara, do you want to chime in now?
Sure. So as far as like a template, because a lot of times your LEAs will ask for just like a simple template. One of the ones that they can use is from Perkins, but there really isn't a standard one, but I know that there is a lot of LEAs that have some really great templates. And so as we're sharing our resources, if any of you have a template that is working for you, please be sharing it. The main thing here is that it is so important. I cannot express to you how important it is to support your LEAs with getting a CTE plan. We could tell at CDE that it was very clear that there was, not everybody, but there was a big amount of applications that we received in the office that it was clear that a CTE plan was not developed. And so I just can't express how important it is for you to support these LEAs in getting a plan, because it's going to make a difference, and it's going to make a difference in helping them with getting the funding that is needed. Remember that things like CTIG and SWP, they're not used, they're supposed to supplement your program, not supplant your program. And we were seeing a lot of that, because you could even tell in the LCAPs in the budget that CTE was clearly not a priority in districts, in many districts, not all. There are some districts that flourish, they get it, they have a plan in place, their LCAP is solid, and so that's what we want to try to shoot for so that we can continue to support CTE. So my recommendation is to support your LEAs in getting a plan so that they can work from that and do all the steps that Raelynn talked about. That's it.
Do we use, are you back on, Raelynn?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I lost. My connection seems to be messed up.
Do you want to take off your video if you haven't already? I don't see if you're on video. Sometimes that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting any feedback?
Yeah, we're hearing an echo. Is there, do you have another speaker on? Are you on multiple devices?
No.
You want to try one more time? Raelynn, just speak into the microphone.
Testing?
Yeah, yep, still has some. Do you maybe want to disconnecting and try back again? We have a few questions we could probably field. Maybe folks can help.
Okay.
Sure, let me jump in and let me just remind folks. I know sometimes I've noticed a couple of the chats, can we have this, can we have that? Our intent for the training is really at a 30,000 foot level to give you an overview and then to provide you with where the additional information is. And we all know until we need the information, we really don't remember it. So that's part of the purpose of this training. Some of you have asked about a list of acronyms for both the community college and the California Department of Ed. In the healthcare industry, we mandated the disuse of acronyms for just that reason, because it's too easy to confuse. And in our world, it's life and death. It should be life and death in education as well. But for many of us, I think we might be able to put together some of the acronyms of what it means. Although I would tell you, a little cheat sheet that I've used is called Google. And if I just put into Google the acronyms, I'm always amazed how it does come through. But yes, it is very frustrating.
Can you
I
hear me,
think we-
Lila?
Yes.
I have a resource that has a list of acronyms, educational acronyms, and I will go ahead and post that on the Google Doc for anybody that needs help with
Perfect.
that.
Perfect. So are you back, Raelynn?
I can hear you, I just can't see you.
Okay. Can you go on? Are you wanting to move forward?
Well, I was finished with my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay, let's, one of the questions in the chat was, are we connected to linked learning?
Linked learning is a type of CTE. It's a delivery device for CTE. I'm not sure what that means is in the question.
I think the question is, are there models of CTE that use linked learning? And actually, there are a number of models that do use LA City or LA, yeah, in LA County. There are a number of high school districts that have subscribed to linked learning, as well as probably the exemplary model is at Long Beach Unified School District and the Long Beach Community College and their 4-year program. And basically what it is just linking a sequence of courses together with a very purposeful structure. And again, we know when students have a clearly defined goal and clearly defined roadmap, they tend to be successful. And then the good news is that usually that brings additional funding in the realm of tutorial and support services that are available to the students so that we can achieve outcomes. You know, every student doesn't get it the first time in the classroom. Many of them need additional tutorial work, even a peer tutor. Many of these approaches are very effective in helping the students achieve, you know, the outcome of learning and mastery of the information. There's also been some questions about CalPAS, which is, I think, now called CalPAS Plus, which is a system that we will talk about tomorrow a little bit in the webinar on use of data. But it's the mechanism by which we take CDE data that you submit and utilize it on Populate Launch Board. It's sort of a transition. The criteria, the most important message is that the K through 12 must sign an MOU, which allows CalPAS Plus to have access to your data. It is at no cost, but it is a sharing platform. And that's this morning, and there was a reference by John from the Center of Excellence regarding Launch Board. And that mechanism to populate that with the K through 12 data is CalPAS Plus. Okay, are there other questions?
The other point that came up earlier, Layla, that I would want to make sure that we're reiterating is that ROP did not go away. I think Raelynn was talking about the number of districts that absorbed ROP funding. So there are many places in the state that ROP is alive and well.
Yes.
That we just want to make sure we're not giving information that sounded as though it doesn't exist any longer.
It did go away in many regions, unfortunately. I know in LA, we're lucky that we still have a number of ROPs in existence. And I'm thinking of the one in my backyard of Tri-Cities. I know Teresa's on the call as a new pathway coordinator. And that particular ROP serves, is actually the provider of career tech ed at our high schools in our geographical region of Rio Hondo College. So, you know, we're happy they're still there, and we're happy for the support within districts. But again, those are all local decisions that are made and sometimes out of our control. But I think if we can show some growth in those areas and some delineation of their roles and responsibilities, we have an opportunity to make sure they don't go away. Other questions?
There's some more administrative questions that maybe Melissa can also help with about both the slides that Raelynn shared as well as when the recording will be available.
Sure. The slides that Raelynn shared should be in the Google Drive that I shared with everybody, but I will make sure to post that again when I send out a follow-up. And we do have the recording should be available shortly by the end of today, and then I can also post those links up if people want to review.
Thanks, Melissa.
Okay, are there other questions people have, or?
I'm sorry, I missed one about the CTE funding listed on one of her slides. I think, I'm sorry, I missed whose name it was who asked that question. I think there was a question about the different kinds of funding Raelynn had on one of the earlier slides. Folks are asking if we could just briefly touch on what those are.
Okay. Raelynn?
Sure. So the LCAP is your general funds. That's where you have local control over where the funds are spent within the district. Perkins are federal funds, and not all districts get Perkins or take Perkins. It's a lot of work, and if you don't qualify for much money, sometimes it may not be worth it to apply for Perkins. But those are federal funds. Then you have CTIG, which is the CTE Incentive Grant, and the K-12 Strong Workforce Program. Those are grants that we get from the state. CTEFP is the CTE Facilities Program, Prop 51 grants. So those are CTE building grants. So if you're building buildings, things like that. CPAs are California Partnership Academies, which are cohorted academies within schools, and the students have all their classes together, their core curriculum and their CTE classes. Ag incentive is for ag programs. Ag is very strong in California, and the ag incentive grant, if you have a district that's involved in FFA, they probably have ag incentive. And then SSP are specialized secondary programs, and they have to be CTE specific if you're going to use them for matching funds. But all of these different funds you can use for matching in your CTIG and your SWP applications. The only thing you cannot use is you can't use CTIG for SWP, and you can't use SWP for CTIG, and you can only use match once. You can't use it more than once. So does that help, hopefully?
And Raelynn, I assume these all come out on different cycles?
Yes.
So, yes,
Yes.
with different applications and different requirements. And so when you said read the RFA, read the RFA, and read the RFA, you weren't kidding. And sometimes I think the mistake we make is the square peg in a round hole. If the requirements for a certain type of funding, let me use Perkins that I'm the most familiar with. Perkins is for program improvement for the development of new programs. It is not for ongoing support of programs such as paying faculty salaries. So if you're going to improve a program, it means you're either going to maybe revise the curriculum do some revision, maybe bring it up to date. Maybe technology has been added to a program and you're going to add that component or whatever it might be. Or maybe you're going to develop a new course along a continuum of a career pathway. Perkins also looks at articulation and dual enrollment and linkage to the community college and calls those out in particular. So the items that I talked about, career pathway, are very, that information overlaps with what is required in Perkins in order to have a, they use the term program of study. Strong Workforce uses the term career pathways, but basically it entails both. So a comment, thank you, Diane, who's a TAP in the Motherlode region, the central area, California, that CTE provided a CTE grid with all the due dates for the different rounds of funding. Is there a similar document for the K-12 Strong Workforce grants? Well, we had round 1 and we have round 2 and we're waiting on round 3. And no, we have not formalized it as such, but it is a good idea for us to develop that grid. And maybe the charge, one of our K-14 TAPs can help us put that in place. So just for clarity, and you know, so folks know when those are due.
So in the Google Doc, there is a file called CTE Funding Timeline, and that shows CTIG and SWP funding on one sheet together. Just keep in mind that any future funding is subject to change.
Right.
But it gives you the term of the grant and when the report, the final report is due. So you'll probably find that document helpful.
Raelynn, I actually had the privilege of seeing that document a couple of months ago, and I was just going to ask you if you had updated it since then, because I know that a lot of dates have changed.
So it was updated in February.
Oh, okay.
So I think it has all the current due dates for final reports. The only thing that it's not going to have is the dates, the upcoming dates of when the RFAs will be out for the future funding.
Okay, somebody's asked a question. Do you know anything about middle school foundation grants? I don't know particularly those that deal only with middle school. I do know that high school grants that, again, like the community college, want to ensure a pipeline. We all know that in middle school, that those students, that's where we lay the foundation for the course sequence that they're going to take in high school. And so in planting that foundation and ensuring strong academic preparation for the students to enter into a clearly defined career pathway in the high school, that there is an opportunity to share resources with it. You know, I have to tell you that looming, of course, is the severe budget cuts we're all looking at. And yet I will admit in my career, those times when I probably was the most creative and most successful was during budget cuts, because I was forced to look at what I could leverage. And oftentimes it's people. And by building relationships with people and working together, as I said before, with a student as the focus, you really don't need money to do that. And part of this time, as we're Zooming to death, where we're almost tired of Zooming, it does save travel time. And the reality is we can bring people together to have these conversations. And I would encourage you to utilize these opportunities to reach down into your feeder middle schools as well, because they are very key in planting that foundation and how those students will transition to the high schools. And I know yesterday there was a comment made about career exploration beginning in elementary school. Absolutely. I mean, I know I asked my oldest daughter, when did she decide to go to college? And her response was, well, you took me to college when I was still in the womb. So I guess it was from conception on. But truly, I think there's something to be learned from that. That is the expectation that we set for young people, and then helping them to aspire to reach that. But the earlier they're exposed to these different careers, either within a family structure or a purposeful structure, or even an informal conversation, a neighbor. I know when I would ask nursing students, so why did you come to this college? Why did you pick this career? And I would say, how many of you saw a brochure? And then I'd see all these hands not raised. I'd say, well, so who sent you here? And often it was a neighbor. Often it was a relative. Often it was a family friend. And sometimes it was during an office visit to a doctor's office that had prompted their interest in healthcare. So I think there's no too early time to begin that education.
So getting back to the middle school grant question, there are some middle school grants in California. They're planning grants, but those programs have to be linked to a CPA.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other questions? I've been looking in the chat. I don't see anything. Somebody shared that Perkins funding can reach down to 5th grade now, they believe.
Yes.
So that's another area of use of funds. But I would submit to you, and I know as we look at each one of these, we could say, oh, it's a lot of work. But the reality is, if you have a clear plan, then applying for funds in one of these categories should be relatively easy. When I've written grants and read grants, and the strongest grant proposals are those that clearly had a vision of what they wanted to accomplish and had identified what the outcomes were. And then to be able to write for funding, two things happen. Number one, you have a clear plan that you can now articulate. But I have witnessed these people write with passion because it's something they really want to do, and that passion comes through to the reader. And whether we've crossed every I and dotted every I and crossed every T, the reality is that passion will come through, and you'll probably receive the funding because folks, as they read it, will say, wow, they have a plan. They have something already they're building on. They really want to do this. And so I would encourage you to go back to the beginning, that of a clearly defined plan, not just to say, well, we're going to do CTE. No, you need to identify what it looks like, what's the outcomes you expect, and who's the population you plan to serve.
There's also a question here, Lila, about if there's examples, or if Raelynn or Tanya want to, Tara want to share securing funds that are kind of able to thread some of this other money in from industry, foundations, say, imagine the private sector, anything that's outside of public education funding, if folks have examples of that.
So you can use, for matching funds, you can use bond funds as long as they are specific to CTE. You could use foundation funds, but again, they have to be specific to CTE. An industry partner might give a district or an LEA a donation, and if it's specifically for CTE, those funds can also be used for match when you're applying for these grants.
Another question is, can Perkins funds be used by charter schools? My understanding is yes, but I mean, charter schools are still public schools.
They have to apply just like anybody
Right.
else.
Right. There is an application process with Perkins K through 12 as well as the community college, but it's not quite as competitive. If you can respond to all the requirements of the RFA, you're probably likely to get funding. But again, you have to have a plan in place, or the
Yes.
reader's going to see that you really are just answering questions to an RFA. You don't really have a plan of how you're going to spend it.
And the Perkins consultants at CDE are very helpful if LEAs have questions about Perkins, applying for Perkins, how to go about the process, that whole thing. Perkins 5 is new, and there are a lot of things that are new with regard to Perkins and what is required, especially when it comes to special populations. So it'll be important to watch what comes out with the new Perkins plan and the new state plan.
So there's another question about, or a statement that middle schools have issues with appropriate credentialing for teachers that is allowable. I would only assume that gets worse in primary. Yes, again, we have to play by the rules, but don't forget that Perkins Program of Study is not all just CTE. It also includes academic preparation. And especially in our health areas, a strong math field, a strong science field is critical. Having run health science programs for a number of years, I will tell you that the students who were the most successful came with a strong academic background in the science and math in high school. Does that mean if you don't have that, you can't go in that field? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I think let's not lose sight of that in our program of study as well.
And a lot of the programs in middle school are exploratory. So they're more like wheel programs. Yes. Where they students look into more than one industry sector, and a CTE credential is not required in middle school for that.
Right. Yes, those wheel programs are awesome. If you're not familiar with that, you might want to look at that. It's a nice way for career awareness for students to be exposed to different areas and to just learn some real practical skills, a little woodwork, a little home ec, you know, maybe a language, all kinds of different areas.
This is Tara. I do want to add that there is a little bit of conflict between CDE and CTC in regards to middle school credentials. And so I know that they're trying to work that out because everybody is saying that, oh, you don't need to have a CTE credential at middle school, and CTC is saying, yes, you do. And so I just want to encourage you to, not saying that it's going to go that way, but that your middle school teachers are getting a CTE credential. Start working on that. It's not required right now, but I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but it may be something that the LEAs need to look at for their middle schools, just for that added security to their programs, making sure that they have CTE credentialed teachers.
Thanks, Tara.
Somebody else has posted a link in the chat if you're not in it. Middle School Foundation Academies Grant. That's a great resource. Thank you, Carrie. These are all great tools that you can have as you're out there working with the schools. And one of my favorite phrases is, how can I make this happen? Not can I, but rather how. I've learned not to ask the yes or no question because half the time I'm going to get no. So rather I take the approach. How can I develop a career pathway from A to B to C? And then what can you do? What can I do? What do we need outside sources to do? And I think that's served me well in my career of helping to facilitate that development.
So I just a note here. I just added a glossary of terms, which is the acronyms thing that I was talking about. It's now in the Google Doc.
Great. Now, I don't know if we have one for the community college. Years ago, I know I had one. I may have thrown that away after all these years, but I'll write myself a note because
The
I think.
Academic Senate has one that I posted it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it may not be exhaustive, but I did post it in the chat and
Perfect.
I added it to the Google Doc.
Perfect. Yeah, situations like this come up and then we develop something and then we forget where we put it, but that's great. The Academic Senate has one.
You know, another thing that LEAs are going to be concerned with, and I'm sure most of the K-12 coordinators already know this, is the CCI, the College and Career Indicators for the California dashboard. So it'll be important to make sure that you're familiar with that and how that all works. And there are a couple of resources in the Google Doc for that as well.
Yes, I think one of the challenges is you're serving several masters. You're serving the master of the K through 12 districts. You're serving the master of then wherever the funding is coming from. So I get why people sometimes don't apply for grants because it's like, I can't take on one more responsibility, but I encourage you to look at those intersections, where they align and what best meets those needs. And as a result, to leverage that specific targeted resource because it fits into the philosophy and mission of that particular LEA entity. Oh, I love this question. Yes. Will we explore when high schools run trimesters and then have issues with dual enrollment because of timing? It is a challenge just with the community college to match up the high school. And I know the dual enrollment program I ran, I used to get these questions all the time. What, you mean I have to go to class that day? When you commit in a dual enrollment class to take a college class, it's offered as a college class. And that needs to be communicated up front. And the schedule is built, hopefully, as compatible as it can be with the high school. This, again, stems from good communication and working together. That's why dual enrollment sometimes doesn't work in some locales. But in others, it can align. Same way, if you use a high school teacher who meets those minimum qualifications to teach a dual enrollment class for the college, and suddenly they're starting a week earlier, or they're starting a week later, or how do we help them to play the role now of a community college instructor? Because that's what they are, because the law says to teach a community college class, you have to be approved by the community college and meet the minimum qualifications as specified by our academic senate. But again, I would say that if we sit down together, those issues can all be worked out, and it all, to be successful, it's called communication, communication, communication. Lay it all out ahead of time so everybody knows what they're getting into. sometimes high school students and their parents will choose not to take that dual enrollment class because it doesn't fit into that student's schedule. And we have to acknowledge that. So it's it has to be strategic. It can't be a last minute. When somebody calls and says to me, well, I want to do a dual enrollment, or I even want to do articulation. I want to do it now. And I said, well, we can initiate now, but probably the soonest we can get everything in place to work will be a year from now. And that seems like a long time, although actually it goes quite quickly. But that's to ensure that everybody has all the same information, the accurate information, and we don't have students who find they are in a situation that they did not want to be in. And nobody wins in those situations. So it needs to be thoughtful. It needs to be based on good communication. Okay, there's a question about a closed campus for dual enrollment. I remember when I was a board member in my neighboring district, in my district where my kids went to school. And we offered college classes on the campus, and the Board of Trustees has to pass a resolution to allow adults on campus because it was an open class. That's what was required. The AB 288 allows us now to have those closed classes. And that is one of the major advantages. However, I will tell you, I have offered the others and it does work. And you have a big sign out that says adults will be allowed on campus because they're taking a class, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's just jumping through the added hoops to ensure that we meet all the legal requirements. And we have somebody who's posted a resource for school dashboard technical guide. Thank you for that. Yes, Bob, thank you. Our dual enrollment classes under AB 288 allowed our community college to match the course schedule to our schedule. And that's because it was planned ahead. Good for them, and that's the ideal. And it just demonstrates, again, in my mind, the ability of folks who choose to work together to make this happen. Good for them. Okay, I think we're done a little early, but that's fine. Melissa, if you can add the survey. So the survey is up. I know that I haven't hit every question. I will ask Melissa to send me the questions and review them tonight. And we should have some time tomorrow in the morning session to answer those as best I can. Some of them may need answers from other people. But the good news is Rancho Santiago District did send out to the K-14 TAPS, I think your year 2 funding. That was good at $180,000. And when I asked why, which I'm sure you're all asking, it's because the funds were not all spent from year 1, and an assessment was made that this hopefully was adequate funding to support those positions. Many of our districts haven't even started, don't even have a K-14 person in place yet. So that was a reason for the reduction in funds. But you did get the notice from Rancho district of the intent to award. So that was very timely. So the survey is up. Please provide us with your feedback. And then we welcome you back tomorrow at 10 o'clock, in which everyone's favorite subject is data. But this is our ability to tell our story. We need to know how to tell our story. We need to be successful in telling our story, and we need to use the appropriate tools. We look forward to your feedback on the data discussion so that we can make it as painless as possible for everybody in collecting the data. But again, it's part and parcel. So thank you all for joining today. We look forward to our discussion tomorrow. Especially,
Lila,
yes.
this is Kit. Can I just quickly, I dropped in the chat box, I just wanted to very quickly extend an invitation to anyone on the call who's from the Bay region to join our standing bi-weekly call tomorrow from noon to 1, realizing that takes the break here and we'll be back on this call at 1. But if people wanted to get a flavor for how we work in the Bay region, if they're new in the role, they might just pop into that call for a few minutes if they have the stomach for that. So I dropped all that information in the chat box and just wanted to pass that on.
Great. Thank you, Kit. Appreciate that. Yes, that would be a great opportunity for folks to see a region in action. Thank you for that.
Sure. Thank you for allowing me to put that in there.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. Okay, thank you all. And make sure you complete the survey before you log off. We appreciate your feedback.